Awesome.
So, um, again, as Adley said, this is our friend Lex Robertson, and he is a bassist extraordinaire. Uh,
Yes.
Lots of fun to play with, a great human, and we're excited today because we're going to talk about rhythm section, the bond between a bass player and a drummer, and how that special relationship really can help shape the music in all musical settings. But today, I think specifically we'll talk about how that works in a worship band setup. So I'm gonna hand it over to Lex, and we'll go from there.
Hello, my name is Lex. How's it going? Um, so you play bass at your core?
Yes.
Cool. What kind of bass do you have?
Um, this one, the
Squire. Fender Squire.
Nice. That's what I'm playing. It's a Fender. Well,
Nice.
so do you have any questions just off the top of your head about anything? We could.
no.
No, not really. I get it. You're like, no, just tell me something. Where do you want to start, Chris?
So I think what we could do is, so since you're a bass player, Michelle, I think I'll start by playing the drums, and then observe how Lex creates his groove based on what I'm doing, and then maybe we can talk a little more about what he's listening for when a drummer's playing, and then how we kind of together make a decision on something. Okay? So I'll just start a groove. Lex will jump in, and then we can break that down. Cool.
Yeah.
So that might have been loud. So there, what I'm listening for is what he's doing on his bass drum. So I want to try to strike my strings, what he's playing on his bass drum, and that's how a drummer and a bass player, they call it locking up. They sound like they're in a groove, and what we just played is a groove, laying down the foundation for all the other guys to sound really good. But without us, they just don't really sound that great. So, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just play like a worship groove. So so you hear I'm striking right on when he's playing, and that makes it sound instead of just play some. So if I'm out of it, it just doesn't sound like together. And then sometimes it might be like if it's like you're like four on the floor. So if I'm like, so I'm just kind of pushing that with him. So he's playing, and I'm just, and that helps make it sound cohesive and lay down what they call the rhythm section, which is us us two guys. Just making it sound cleaner, better.
Lex, kind of talk about your touch.
Yes.
Because a lot of times I'll see bass players that just start playing and they just strike the string and it rings out like, especially when you're trying to get in a groove in a pocket. How important is your touch and you feel?
So, super important. I I have so many of my students when I teach. They'll they'll strike it real hard, and sometimes they'll play up on the neck or up on. But I always play right on the fret. I mean, right on the pickup. I rest my thumb, and and I just try to. I don't want to strike it too hard because then it doesn't sound good. So it's just a real kind of play to the room. Sometimes it's hard for me to get that apart, kind of get that idea across. But it's usually just you just want a good ring out of it and let the volume, let the amp do the work. I always tell the story. I play to my environment, meaning what's everything around me. We were recording down at Black Cat, and Marty was going to play a part on what we were playing. And when the bass was so hot, but I was just, kind of playing it to what the recording was. So Marty, not being a bass player, but just doing the part, was like, bow, 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 and it was overdriving the system. So it's all about just the touch. And there's sometimes you want to dig in. It's what's the word I'm looking for? Dynamics. So the word dynamics, meaning there'll be sometimes, maybe it's when we start the song, everybody's kind of in, and then it comes to the verse, and it's like kind of bring it down, and that's all part of touching the strings as well, and striking them. So I play with my two fingers. I don't know. A lot of people start out playing with their thumb, and I tell everybody to get away from playing your thumb if you can. I use these two, and
East side.
yeah, these, and I just use them 1 2 1 2. I'm trying to think about that, but yeah, and
Alternating.
yes, alternating. Thank you. So that's a little bit about that. I don't know if I explained that very well, but
No, it was good.
No.
I think like another thing, what Lex is doing, and that probably feels so natural to him at this point, is the note duration, like how long playing the notes or what he's choosing to mute. I know Adley yesterday talked about like when you go to a verse or the second verse, you change it up a little bit, and a lot of that was the feel and the touch and the length of the notes. So when he played the example there was a section where he let the notes ring out nice and long, and then all of a sudden it kind of snapped in and the groove got tight. And a lot of that is obviously the touch, but then also the length of the notes.
yeah.
So maybe we can play like a groove where the verse is tight, and then when we go to a chorus, you just open it up a little bit.
Sure. Is anybody else getting radio in there?
Yeah, there's weird radio stuff happening.
Do y'all hear that? Everybody else is good? If y'all are good, it's fine.
All right.
Here comes a verse. Right here on the 3 down. 2 3. Yeah. So I'm kind of muting the string with my fingers a little bit. And then let's get to a chorus here. We're getting big. Here we go. So that kind of gives you an idea of how you can, in a worship song, if it starts out with the intro and then you come into the verse and just bringing your volume down and not having to use your volume button, but just by how tight or how hard you pluck the strings with each hand. And I use a combination of both. I will staccato up here, meaning instead of the like that, if that makes any sense to you. And then when it's time to go back in the chorus, I'll let it out a little bit. So it's kind of like a breaking gas or a choke, just letting it fluctuate, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and then from the drum side, again, we talk about the connection between the bass player and the drummer. If you noticed, when Lex starts playing more muted and tighter notes, like I'm trying to imitate that same thing. So when he goes to like a really tight groove, I'm trying to do that here. So I'm going to something that has a really short, tight sound, and then when he opens it up and kind of lets those sustained notes get a little longer and brings a little more energy, I go to this cymbal, which the same kind of thing happens. It opens up and it has a longer sustain. So for the drummers out there, that's something to really like. That is a really simple way to kind of lock in. And the important thing about music is that we're not just focusing on our own instrument. There's so many things that we have to get to on our own instrument first. Um, but by practicing, and this is why practicing is important, when you practice on your own, when you finally do get to a rehearsal with the ensemble, because you've practiced, you are less focused on exactly what you personally are doing, and your ears are more open to what's happening around you. That's the next level in music. The first level is getting yourself, your own playing ability to a certain level. The next level is now that I'm comfortable with what I'm playing, I'm now using my ears to listen and feed off of what's happening. Lex and I have been playing for a lot of years together, and there are a lot of times where we don't even have to look at each other, and we just go a certain direction. And the only way to do that is one, play with people a lot, but then two, just really be open to listening to what's happening. And some of the coolest moments as a musician come from I hear somebody else do something, and that stirs an emotion in me that then causes me to do something. And now a song that normally goes this way, we've gone this way, and there's a different energy to it. You know, um, that is one of the most fun things about music, is that kind of interaction that happens. And for us as a rhythm section, that's really key. You are brothers and sisters, like you guys are have a big responsibility to shape the song. And by opening up our ears and listening to each other, we can lock in and then really just have some fun. Um,
It also makes worship, just the experience of worship, better too.
yeah, I talked about in my drum master class, I like to practice until um, don't have to worry about the notes and stuff, because at that point I've practiced, and so then I can turn my eyes and my heart to worshiping. And that's, man, when you're at that place where you've practiced enough to where you're not so worried about the minor details, because that comes naturally at that point. Um, then you're able to worship and just kind of like focus on everything else that's happening, in terms of like the spirit in the room and then the music around you. And that is a really fun place to get to. Um, and it shows to the congregation too, like they can feel that energy. Any questions so far on that or comments?
Mm.
Yeah, she's like that.
Yeah. So, Michelle, who do you listen to? Like, is there a bass player you listen to? Like, or is a better question, when you listen to music, what instrument like does your ear focus on?
Really, because I can rarely hear like the bass in music, so listen to the drums
Okay.
and then just listen to the whole song when we're supposed to get loud and when we're supposed to get quiet.
That's cool. That's good. That's a very good thing in to create or to develop with yourself. Dynamics. I believe dynamics play one of the biggest roles, especially in worship music. Um, because it's just part of it. It goes hand in hand with just so much stuff. So that's a great thing to listen for. And listening to, like, if they give you a new song to learn it at the core, listening to the song, and not only learning the notes, but learning where to play the right notes, but where to play the certain parts and the intensity levels. So if you can kind of take those three key things into learning a new song. Let me ask you, when you guys do learn a new song, do y'all just kind of learn it right there, or do they give it to you and you take it home?
Usually like in the group chat they like give us a song like a couple days before practice so we can listen to it, and then we get together and then we like play the song.
That's cool. That's good. So, just a couple of suggestions, and you may already do this. If you do, great. If not, here's some ideas when they give it to you. Do they give you like music with it, or you just have to listen to it?
Just listen to it. We get the music when we practice.
Gotcha. Okay, so you can take a piece of paper and notepad, and when you're listening to it, you can write down what they call the roadmap of the song. So, okay, here's we're playing the intro. And then, so in the intro, I'm kind of loud, or I'm kind of louder. We're doing that whole opening, or whatever the intro is, and then you might listen to the verse one, and okay, so it seems to come down a little bit there. And listen to what the drummer's doing with his foot, like with his kick drum. You can write that down, so you can make notes throughout the whole song, and then take those to practice with you. Put it beside the music they give you at rehearsal, and then you can kind of look and compare and go, okay, this is where I need to bigger, okay, and then you might be able to be like, tell the drummer and be like, hey, right here's where we kind of lock it up, because he may be over here on a cymbal when he really should be over here, and it's kind of the dynamics are a little lower there. So, not that you want to go and tell everybody what to play. That's not what I mean. But just we will trade off, or not thoughts, but hey, did you know he does this here? Or sometimes we'll change it up, and like he might be doing something in the verse one. Like, are you going to do that kick drum pattern, or are we going to keep it simple? And a lot of times we go simple on what simple mean. Instead of like the foot pattern being a little more, yeah.
So, like the bass drum pedal, and a lot of drummers have a habit of overplaying on the bass drum. Like I can play, but really the song, like again, what Lex was talking about, shaping a song and listening to the dynamics, you need to pace yourself.
Yeah.
You need to always keep in mind that like a song has different gears, like so you don't always. Sometimes you come out the gate, and you're all in, like was saying at the top, you're all in, intensity's up. Then when it gets to the verse, in order to shape that song, you got to strip it back, and so for us, a lot of times, it's almost really fun to see how simple you can make it, because then shifting to that next gear is really simple. You just add one or two more hits or an extra note here or a passing tone or whatever, but because you've started or created that simple space, then moving to the next level feels a lot more interesting, and then you don't overplay, and again, it's all about leaving space and shaping the song. So on a verse, a lot of times we'll just play something like, I don't know.
Yeah. It'd be like coming out of the. He'll start. Go ahead.
But then maybe the second verse, it's a little bit later in the song. We want to build the intensity, so then I might go boom, boom, boom. See, he did it. He knows. But that's the thing, is as a team you make the decision to do that, and that just makes the second verse just slightly different, a little more interesting. It adds to the intensity, and all that kind of stuff. And what's really awesome, and this happens all the time in rehearsal, especially on a new song with me and Lex, is we'll start the song, and perhaps he's playing the bass rhythm one way and I'm playing it another way, but because we're listening, we both immediately switch to each other's pattern.
Yeah.
So like he'll start boom, 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 and I'm just going boom, 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 boom. But then like next bar, because we're listening and we're trying to lock in, we'll both switch, and we just always look up and laugh and say, but that's a good sign, because it's like it means you're listening. And then we stop and we regather and we're like, okay, so what do we actually want to do there? And it's not always me that makes a decision. It's not always the bass player. It is a team effort. Sometimes you just I don't want to say give in, but it's a teamwork thing. Like what's going to work best for the song here.
What sounds better?
And so that's probably 80% of the connection between a bass player and a drummer is figuring out how to lock in and what that means and how to shape the song from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how comfortable are you with your bass player at the core? Your drummer, because you really have to build that relationship with that person and actually practice together. Because again, Chris and Lex demonstrate, because there's two different contexts, right? When you're at the core, you're worshiping, it's a different atmosphere. But guys, just play like you're in a jam session, like you playing somewhere. Just do you.
Want to start it?
You start out. That way I'll know when I'm going. Woo! I ain't done that in a minute.
So you see how Lex was in bum 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 bum, and then the first time Chris heard it, he's like, "Oh, okay, so that's where you want to go." And he kind of did that on the, I don't know if you did it on the toms or on the cymbals, but he followed. So but that's a jam session. So they could do whatever. But when we go to the core, and we're part of a worship team, bass and drum is the heartbeat, right? Because after you have the heartbeat, that's not it. People have to sing. The words are what matter when we sing in a worship team. So my friend always tell me, less is more. So just keep it. Yeah, but dynamics will change it. But the simpler you keep it, the better, because the words then can penetrate the ears and go into the heart, and hopefully the Holy Spirit does the transformation. So
I can't echo that enough. So many people, and I went through it too. I was early on in my worship team career, and I thought, man, I gotta show everybody how good I am on every song, on every part, and it kind of took away from the worship experience. And I remember.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I played. I'm a little bit younger than most of the guys in transmission, and I was like this young kid, like 14, playing with them, and Bernie was really pushing me to play with them. But like I'd get up there and I'd try out every little drum fill that I've been working on in my practice room, like not even in a rehearsal, like on the actual worship session, and I would feel this tension after playing because it's just like I know like I've just butchered this moment because I'm trying, like I'm trying to work on something, and so it just takes growth and kind of learning to know what works and then how you can best serve the song. And through that, Lex and I have become really good friends. And again, like I said, like we don't really have to look at each other. We do a lot of times because it's fun to see people's reactions and smile and interact. But like I could be looking one way and Lex is doing something. And because like we built that relationship and we are listening, we can adjust. And that just comes from building the relationship, and Lex, in a loving way, said to me, like, pulled me aside and said, hey, like, that stuff's cool, but, like, maybe we should try and do this. And that's how you do it. You don't, it's not abrasive, I'm sure in the moment, Lex may have felt a little more angry about me playing ridiculous stuff, but, like, he took the time to have that conversation with me and, hey, like, that's cool, but it's not really we're not really locking in,
I
And
had somebody have the same conversation with me. It was just kind of like, you don't have to play everything you know in every song. Give them a little something. Always leave the party while the interest is still there.
so I mean that's it. Like with whoever's playing drums with you, Michelle, like that's why rehearsing's good, because then you can have those conversations there as opposed to like on a Sunday morning when you're in it, So like rehearsing with by yourself to get yourself to the level to know the song, and then when you get to an actual rehearsal with the group, just kind of really being intentional. And we were talking about this a little bit before we started the master class, kind of like how we do the process of figuring out our part. Usually, when you're playing a new song, if you can have a recording, you go listen to that recording and then see how they're doing it. And then usually, when you show up to rehearsal to play it together with a group, you kind of lock in already because you're going initially to what you hear on the recording. But sometimes that, maybe with the ensemble that you have, it would feel better to do it a different way. And so usually after that first little run through, that's when we stop and immediately look at each other and
Make
say,
adjustments.
all right, what can we do? Like, I couldn't quite hear what you were doing on that first chorus. Like, do you want to do this? And so that is just huge. Communication, talking. It's not just because Lex didn't necessarily like what I was doing on the bass drum. It's not an offensive thing. Like, I'm not offended. I just, what's going to work best for the music, So,
What is it? Do you guys rehearse on a weekday night, or do you guys do it Sunday mornings?
Usually on a weekday, but then sometimes like work schedule for other people, we do it like on the Sunday.
Yeah. So the best thing I can tell you is don't show up when you practice. Practice at home and learn the song. Don't show up and have to learn the song. There's so many places. I play at lots of different churches around Atlanta, or I don't at the moment because I work at a church. But you didn't show up to your gig to learn the song. You show up to go over the changes with the band, or the how it's all going to fit together. So the more prepared you are at home or in your own personal practice, the easier it makes and less stressful it makes showing up on a Sunday morning if that's what has to happen, and that's just always something I tell anybody, any of my students or anything. Go show up to full band rehearsal as well prepared as you can be, because that's not Sunday morning is not the time to be like, is it a G or a F there? So just something I always say.
any questions?
Comments, concerns?
No, it's just with my drummer, like I don't know how long he's been playing, but like it's like weird with him because sometimes he's like in it, and then sometimes he like doesn't come in the right times, even though we tell him like a bunch of times. And he's like we practice and it's like good, and then like he doesn't do it like the same when we actually perform, and like I don't know.
I think one thing that can be helpful with that kind of thing, Lex talked about it earlier, is when you're listening to a song, write out the roadmap, which is how you're going to get from the start of the song to the end of the song. And I like to do that for that reason. Usually, if I know we're going to be rehearsing a new song, I always have my roadmap written out. And that's helpful because, say, there is somebody who shows up to the rehearsal and doesn't have a roadmap, you can be like, look, this is a roadmap of the song, so there are no questions. We're not like going to have to go back to the recording and listen to how the roadmap is. And a lot of times the worship leader will have that figured out. But even I've been in some rehearsals where like the leader may not be
Yep.
sure, so you don't want to be the weak link in your group, like that's my goal in whatever one of the goals in any ensemble. Like I don't want to be the thing that slows stuff down, or I don't want to be the distraction in the group. Like I want to be as prepared. So for your drummer, like if you have that roadmap written out, share it with him. If you can make a copy, go ahead and make a copy and give it to him. And so that way, on Sunday morning after you've rehearsed it, you have proof of what you've rehearsed. So if there's any question on that Sunday morning, you're like, well, this is what we actually rehearsed. Is this order? And I'm pointing to my music stand because it's where I got one right here. Probably can't see it, but this is something we did, and I just wrote out a quick little roadmap.
Do you understand what we mean by roadmap?
Yeah.
Some people are like, now there's a map involved? Yes.
So again, for people, if they're watching this and they don't know what a roadmap is, it's simply just writing out how you get through a song. So what happens at the beginning of the song, and how do you get from there all the way to the end. For each musician in the band, that might look a little bit different based on what your part does. But for one thing that should be the same is the order of how you get there. Cool? Does that make sense?
What's another challenge that you feel like you have with your, not maybe you, but your worship band has a lot?
I feel like sometimes, like with the piano, I feel like we're playing the same rhythm, and then I feel like I'm doing something wrong because it just all sounds the same. So I don't know what to do when that happens.
Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's when you look at the piano player, you say, "Hey, I play bass." I'm just kidding. But
Stay in
that,
your lane.
yeah, that and that's listen. I've had that happen to me for years, especially with piano players who didn't have a bass player, and so they would play a lot of bass notes, so it would fill it out a little bit. That's I don't know how to combat that battle other than I just told them, "Hey, yeah, like like Adley said, stay in your lane."
Or you can just tell them, hey, there's voicings right in the band. So you have the lead singer, who's that's the most important thing they're doing is singing the lyrics. But the bass player is gonna have the bottom, and then the kick, all that's gonna be one. If you have a guitar player, you're probably gonna be a little more trebly, so you're gonna be in the upper voicing. But if you're a keyboard player, stay in the middle. If you look at your keyboard, you have the bass up here, you have the high keys, just stay right in the middle. I don't know what do you call it, C4 or C5, whatever, middle C. Just be right there and just stay there. So when you're listening to it, like if you have a graph, you'll see bass will be down there with kick, voice will be up here, and then you'll have keyboard in the middle, and maybe some guitarist pen. So like in your ears, it sounds good too, and that's all part of the oneness of worship, right? It's everything comes back together. Nobody's sticking out.
Yeah.
Nobody should be sticking out.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Lex gives this analogy of you know, being in a band is it's like a pie, and we all fill up different parts of that pie. If you want to elaborate on that idea.
Yeah, well, it's like I've heard. I'm taking it from other people, but if you have a whole pie and the worship leader who plays acoustic guitar comes in and it's just him, he has to play that whole pie. Well, then he has a piano player come in, and so now we can cut the pie in half. So he's playing acoustic guitar, and the piano player is playing. So he's going to play a little. The piano player will play a little bit further down, little to fill it out a little bit. Well, then now you have a bass player and a drummer come in. So now that pie is split into four. Bass player and the drummer can't eat the whole pie, nor can the lead singer and acoustic guitar player. So everybody has to know their part and stay in their portion of pie.
Yeah, it's all about like what's our responsibility in that group, That's what we mean by, the section of the pie, like where is our responsibility to fill up that thing. And the more people you have in a group, the more you kind of have to divide up that space. Um, I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but if you have two guitar players, they can't be playing the same thing.
Yeah.
They gotta figure it out. And so, um, yeah, for you as a bass player, if the piano player is also playing the same bass notes and same rhythm as you, that's gonna cause a little bit of friction there. And so you maybe just say, hey, what would it sound like? You always want to be less offensive when you're trying to communicate that with a group. Like I don't, inside I might be tempted to be like, hey, stop playing my notes, like
Yeah.
or whatever. But like try to just word it in a way, hey, like I'm curious, what would it sound like if maybe you played up here, and then just kind of go from that angle. And same thing, um, as relating that back now to drum and bass. A lot of times we lock in, but then there are times when perhaps the bass player plays something a little more involved, and if I try to imitate every little thing he's doing, it's going to sound way too busy. So then maybe in those moments, I kind of pull back and play simple and let the drummer or let the bass player have a moment to fill that space up a little bit. And then sometimes vice versa. Like if I'm like if it's a big drum section and I'm doing all kinds of fills and stuff, the bass player is not going to just go nuts, like while I'm doing that. They're going to try and hold it down a little bit. And then maybe in between there's some like give and take and we, respond to each other and all that. But it's all about just trying to figure that out and work on that balance. But a good starting place is to listen to music, listen to
Yeah.
the genre that you're playing and hear how those guys do it.
What pieces do you have in your band? You have a piano player, obviously, bass player, you and drummer. What else do you have?
An acoustic guitar, and then we have three singers.
Three singers. Cool. Okay, it's pretty standard there. Um, yeah, that would be something you could always explain. Say, I'll take the low part, piano, you take the middle part, and acoustic, you give it some of that high stuff. And I mean, that's just an idea. But any other issues or problems? I say issues, just things that you get frustrated with.
How's the sibling rivalry? Because I know your sister is the one who's in charge. How,
Sometimes she doesn't speak up when she's supposed to when like not everyone's together. But then like in the fall we had an issue where like I spoke up too much, so like now I'm not trying to. So I don't know. There's like a lot of times we're like not together, and then it takes like even longer for practice to like get everything done.
I've been there before too. I get it. If something needs to be said, though, say it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like my co-officer came to me. She's like, might wanna like. But then she's also like saying a lot to my sister, so like I don't know.
Yeah,
It's not to stay quiet.
like maybe just think about the timing and when you choose to do that. Sometimes in the moment of a rehearsal, it might be more tense if we just stop right there and hash things out. Sometimes maybe you just wait till after the rehearsal and you pull that person aside and then just say, "Hey, I have some thoughts about what's happening. Can you try and work this out?" I'm guilty of having a conversation at the wrong moment. Like I've been very guilty of that, and it like it can ruin a lot of the moment. And again, like we call it a worship team or a team. We work together, and half of the battle is just people skills, learning how to deal with the people in your group. If you've heard us talking all week, we talk about how like being in a worship team, like being in a family, when we get to know them. The more I know Lex, the better we play together. Just because, like, I know him, I know his life, I know, his hobbies, I know his struggles, I know like like the more you get to know people at the human level before any of the music ends up being better because of that. So with those conversations, you just kind of have to weigh, like, is it worth me stepping in right now and doing this in front of everybody, or should I just maybe step aside? Bernie, it looks like you have a question. You got a question, or you just, I don't know.
No.
Bernie?
Bernie's testing something, guys. Keep going. He's back.
Oh man!
He got y'all.
Wow, that got me. Testing it.
It's all good.
I
I
had
was
to run
peeping
out.
what Bernie was doing.
I was trying to get a cup of coffee. I didn't want to interrupt.
Man, Chris goes, "Did you have a question, Bernie?" And you just
you kept doing this. I'm like, oh, there's a sequence here. What's Bernie keep doing that?
So I don't know if this is going to
Sorry.
show recording, so I'm just going to explain it real quick. Bernie somehow managed to have a image of himself in the Zoom call looking like he was wanting to ask a question. That was weird.
Sorry. I went to get a cup of coffee.
All good. All good.
I do have a question for you. Lex alluded earlier to not show up to the rehearsal and learn the part. That you're there to walk through the changes. And then Michelle had said that she has a drummer who can't remember what he played at the rehearsal. So do you prefer rehearsing on the same day, just for everybody's benefit and like recall, or are you a fan of like a totally separate day? That's a question for either of you, I guess.
for me, I like the same. I like to show up that morning and run things through. At my church, I'm the musical director, so we have our guys show up. We have 10:30 service. They show up at 8:30, and we're rolling by 8:45. And it usually takes us an hour. Now, we usually mostly know the songs, and if they don't know the song, they've had it for at least a week or two to learn it. And it is the expectation that when they come to know the song and know the changes. I like rehearsing on with worship and how we do it. I like it on Sunday mornings. If I'm in a traveling band or a group, I like us to sit down on a different night and really learn things, and then have the ability for each of my members to be able to recall all those changes and stuff we work with. What about you?
So especially like with the praise band stuff, like I've said earlier, I like to get to a place where I'm so comfortable with the song to where I really don't have to focus on like the music, and I can get my head out of like just the drum practical stuff and can worship. So for me, um, I actually don't mind doing a little bit of both. So like a weekly rehearsal in the middle of the week, perhaps that is a little low pressure, like, but at the same time, I've showed up prepared. Um, if everybody in the group shows up to a rehearsal prepared, I love those kind of rehearsals
Yeah.
because you get to making really good musical decisions in that moment. But if one person shows up not prepared, I hate those kind of rehearsals because it really slows down everything and then it makes it not as fun. But if everybody shows up prepared, then we can get to some details. And then like on the Sunday morning, I like to just touch over
Right.
things. Like
Yeah.
we get together, we do a quick sound check. If you ever watch Bernie talk about sound and all that stuff, it's really important just on the day that you're doing something to kind of sit in that spot and just double check everything. Like,
Yeah.
especially if you got microphones and like technology involved, just like touch everything. Like if
Line check.
bass,
Batteries.
like make sure that your cables are there, the power's plugged in, the level's good. Because if you rehearsed on a Wednesday, there's a lot of days in between Wednesday and Sunday. Somebody could have come by that amp and just like cranked your volume. So if you don't check that on a Sunday morning, you're gonna hit that first note and it's gonna be embarrassing. So
Do you play out of an amp at your core?
Yes.
Good. Good. That is the good thing. Yeah, he's exactly right. I can't tell you how many times Bernie's gotten us out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning for a line check, and we didn't play till 10:30. But it was so important because the one time you don't have a line check, and it's all messed up. But that's Bernie's role as the sound man and as the kind of the guy who's running our crew most of the time. That's what he wants it to sound as best as it can. That's part of the experience of worship. And so that's part of his piece of the pie is to make sure that we're all there.
So Michelle, what's the rehearsal schedule like for you guys? Do you only rehearse on the day of?
Usually we rehearse on Thursdays because we've had a problem where like we don't know all the songs or something. And then an hour before the service, we practice again on
Okay.
Sunday.
great.
That's good.
Yeah, that's
So
Is there a drop off from? Do you feel like guys or people don't remember what they rehearsed from that Thursday?
for drummer, yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody else?
Yeah,
Or is
I
it-
don't know. It's like he plays like he has a lot of energy when we're rehearsing like on Sunday, and then it's like not the same energy when we're actually performing.
I know a lot of folks like that because they get to the race and they're like, oh, I'm nervous. What do I do? I don't know what to do with my hands. You know? That happens because people feel comfortable when you're just kind of in a setting. But for Chris and I, like that's game day. That's when we get to do
well,
it.
and I think part of that, like, if you notice somebody's kind of like a little bit off their game, that's why the communication side of thing, like, like if I notice, I mean, me and Lex are always good at kind of looking at each other when we're playing, but like sometimes you just kind of want to get their attention, like as it, like, come on, like, and maybe lean over and give like an encouraging smile or something, just to get them out of their own headspace, like. I know for me when I was younger, I got nervous all the time. So that Sunday morning fright thing, like it's real for some people. So, if that's not an issue for you, like, lean over, give a smile, like, or, we always do like a handshake before we even go up there on a Sunday morning. Not because like, we're like, oh, we're going to do awesome. But it's just like, it's like, hey,
To
like,
get us in sync.
we're invested in this moment,
Right.
like we're together on this, and this is us, like we're locking in for the day, so anything you can do to just, like, if the nervous thing is not your issue, like anything you can do to kind of like combat
Help
that
him
for
out.
somebody else, like just loosen them up a little bit,
The cool part is like you have a super important job at your core.
Amen.
You're leading people in worship. God has chosen you for this time to help lead people in worship. So if he's nervous, then I want to, because he's right there with me. This guy's going to battle with me. And so it's okay to say, hey, man, let's do this. Or we all, like as a group, we all pray before we go out and play. And then Chris and I always have just a little lock up hug moment, and like it's just kind of helps calm everything down. And so being the most prepared you can be for that Sunday comes all back to you have one of the most important jobs at your core. And if God has chosen me to play at my church and to help lead, I want to be as prepared as I can. So I always tell any of my students that I teach or any classes that I teach, know your material, be in tune. I don't know if they've talked about this at all this week, but
Amen.
Being in tune is it's right next to godliness, and just being as prepared as you can, and helping out your crew, because it's not just, well, I just play the bass. Well, you do just play the bass in that thing, but in that group, but you're still a group, and you want the best product. I don't know if product's the word. You want the best worship experience going out there. So,
For you as a bass player, since we got Michelle on this call, like what are things you have with you always? Like when you show up to
Always.
rehearsal or when you play, like what's in your bag?
So I don't always have to carry an amp with me, because most of the places I show up, they're Bernie's looking at me all funny. They usually have an amp for me, but I always have my bass, a strap. You'd be surprised how many times that thing tries to go missing. People will, hey, can I borrow a strap? I keep 2 straps in my bag, and then a tuner and a cable, and I also keep a 9-volt battery, but that depends on what kind of bass guitar you're using. Yours wouldn't take one, but that's kind of further up. But yeah, those are key things. A tuner goes with me just like my bass goes with me, and a cord, because you take that bass home with you.
This is mine, yes. And then we have one at the core, but I started using mine here at the
Do you know what kind they have at the core? Static.
core. No.
It's Ernie Ball, Music Man, Stingray.
Is it?
It's like a weird, I don't know, because the person who played before me
Oh.
chose it.
Yeah.
It's like, so.
Oh, it's the old Paul McCartney bass. Yeah, play yours.
What's that called?
A Hofner.
The old hop.
Hear it? Yeah. I remember we recorded with that down at Trey's for something for transmission. And Bernie sent that back and said, do the bass over. So you're making the right decision on that. So that's good that you get to take it home. Do you have an amp at home to practice with?
Yeah.
Awesome. That is great. So you have all the tools. Do you have a tuner?
I use my phone.
Hey, that works.
That's good.
That's what's up. I've had to do that before too. Sometimes the tuner dies or batteries or stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, those are essentials. So strap, cable, tuner, and I guess the bass guitar. I mean, you got to have that, right? So, how long have you been playing?
2, 3 years. I don't remember.
How old are you?
17.
17. So yeah, I was about 14 when I started. Yeah, I was interested in it when I was. I started loving hearing the bass when I was about 9 or 10, but just kind of learned. But I started like playing at church when I was about 14, and I'm gonna be 40 in September. So
Old.
Michelle, here's a good illustration for you. Chris, how old are you now?
I am turning 30 this year.
And how long have you been playing bass?
Maybe 2.5 years now.
Yeah. He just started not too long ago either, Michelle, and he's really grooving. But I can tell you, he puts in the work. Like he's checking out YouTube and he's calling Lex and getting lessons, and it's really kind of neat to watch it come together. So at our church, oftentimes Chris is playing bass, not drums, which is so weird for me to see, especially when I'm the guy playing drums. But it's awesome. So keep playing, girl, because there's so many opportunities for growth and the technology that exists for you to even get better.
what does rehearsing look like? Yeah, practicing look like for you?
Like, what do you mean?
When you rehearse, do you just rehearse the worship stuff, or do you practice other things as well? Like,
I just practice like the songs together.
that's cool. Well, that's important. So practice, 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 because it always helps.
Yeah, and I would say listen to some other music too. Like play along to some of your favorite music. You know, like because there's some stuff you can learn from some other styles that will then use that in your worship music. Because a lot of times the worship music, it's you know, I don't want to say simple, but you know, maybe you can pull some sort of information from another bass player. Listen to all kinds of music, all kinds of bass players. Listen to all kinds of drummers. You know, like you can try and have a favorite drummer. Like who do you, you know, what? Try and figure. Listen to as much music as you can, and then Bernie always likes to say, just play along to that music because sometimes the metronome, you know, that's another thing you should have is a metronome because that is key. I know you know what a metronome is because we had it last year at TMI. But you know, play along to the recording you're listening to, or play along with the song that you're practicing. You know.
Cool.
I think we're out of time. You have any last comments?
I did ask one question. I hate to keep you guys, but it's interesting for me to hear because I know Lex has been so influential as it relates to many bass players. But are you a shapes guy, Lex? Like, do you kind of teach people shapes on the fretboard, or are you notes? Let's get the notes right.
Yeah. I know my notes, and it's important to know your fretboard. But when I do something, fun or funky, if I see it in shape, so I see the blocks, and I know that if I go three up and then two, and I'm not explaining myself very well, but if I see it in boxes, and so I know I know I can go from this box to this box, and I can hit a few boxes in between, and it sounds good. So I am definitely a shapes guy. I'm probably more of a shapes guy than I am a notes guy.
So I say that for Michelle because there's some really cool YouTube videos that I've watched that talk about shapes, and I don't think in shapes. I'm always over concerned about the note, and I'm trying to. But when most songs that you play, worship songs, stay in the same key. So once you get that shape for that key, you can really fool around then between the frets with the same shapes, and you'll find that harmonically it's really cool. You can do a lot of neat stuff.
I'll say this one last thing, and this is a song that I always teach to my bass or drum students because I play a little drums and I can teach beginners. But there's a song called "I Love Everyday People," and it was a Toyota commercial song for a long time. But it's a group called Sly and the Family Stone. The bass player plays one note the whole song, and it's. But how he plays it and the shapes of some of the stuff that he does creates the whole thing. And you're just doing this the whole song. You're like, man, this is groovy. And he plays one note. So it's not about the notes that you always play. It's about how you play them. So that's one of my favorite things to show people is just the way you play it. The intensity or less intensity that you play it with. So
Thanks, guys.
Well, I think we're out of time here, but since we got a rhythm section here, I feel like it's appropriate we just jam a little bit and then we can fade this out at the end. Have a good rest of the day, and
we'll see you next time.
See ya.